But from the time the Britishers came, then they had their idea of Victorian morality, and they said that, oh, this is an immoral God. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote an essay called the Bhagavad, its ethics, theology and philosophy, and very celebrated essay. That was the essay that began his, you could say, career as a Gaudiya Vaishnava preacher. So this year is the 100th anniversary of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's disappearance. And so there he explains how Krishna's pastime, he explains to the people at that time how Krishna's pastimes are actually transcendental. They are not material. So what happened is, prior to that also, India was ruled by foreigners. But now, when the Muslims were there, ruling India, nobody considered them to be intellectual competitors to the Vedic religion. See, somebody can mistake, say, copper to be gold. But nobody will mistake a potato to be gold. So, now, if we see, this is not a disrespect of Islam. There are revelations which are meant to elevate people according to time, place, circumstance. And we see Muhammad, that did a lot of socio-cultural reform during his times. But subsequently what has happened in Islam is, that if you see in the Vedic tradition, the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas were always separated. The Brahmanas were the sources of spiritual power, the Kshatriyas were the sources of political power. Now if you see in Christianity also, Jesus was the spiritually potent person, and Christianity was widely spread by Saint Paul, who was one of the apostles, later apostles, and he was like the center of political power. So the separation of spirituality and political power is essential. But Islam, that has not been there right from the beginning. Muhammad was a spiritual revealer as well as a political ruler. And subsequently, most of the followers, rather than focusing on his spiritual teachings, have focused on his political activism. And that's why largely today we see now there are many people who are sincere seekers within Islam also, but it has largely become a search for political power under the garb of religion. And then there are various forms of terrorism and other things that come up. So why I am talking about Islam is, Islam was never an intellectual threat for the Vedic tradition, although it ruled India for so many centuries. But when the Christians came to India, because they had science and technology, which gave them an aura of intellectual superiority, so then when they look down at, hey, you worship such an immoral God, then that disturbed Indians. So then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and especially Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he said that you cannot just trespass into the 10th canto. If people are born in a culture where there is reverence, proper reverence, then one understands and one approaches and understands Krishna appropriately. But when one doesn't have that culture of reverence, one only has a culture of skepticism. So then, when one approaches that attitude, then Krishna's pastimes cannot be easily understood. So, now actually speaking, we are in one sense caught in the cross current of both. Now, culturally, we belong to India. Intellectually, we belong to the West. In the sense that culturally, we have been, most of us have been part of the society where Krishna has been worshipped. Most of us probably, we grew with stories of Ram and Krishna being heard, whatever. Of course, that culture is also rapidly disappearing nowadays. Recently, I was asked to give a school program. So there, when I asked about, do you know Narasimha? The only Narasimha they knew was a former Prime Minister of India. So even the culture is getting lost, but at least in the previous generations it was there largely. But intellectually, the educational system is based on Western rationality and humanism. And that's why we also to some extent have that skeptical, cynical attitude. And that's why we need proper caution when we approach the 10th canto. But ultimately we have to approach the 10th canto. So as we study the Bhagavatam and then we come forward, Prabhupada has given us Krishna book, and then his purpose was what? His Krishna book was meant to be like a trailer. The Krishna book itself gives Krishna's pastimes, but Prabhupada also wanted that it is a summary study of the 10th canto, and he wanted that the 10th canto be studied systematically by devotees. So Satsarup Maharaj once asked Prabhupada, what do you mean by summary study? Prabhupada, when he does the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, he has Sanskrit, then he has the verse-to-verse translation, then he has the word-to-word translation, then he's translation, and then purport. So what is summary study? So Prabhupada, summary study means I do whatever I want. So you wonder, what does it mean, I do whatever I want? Now if you see in the 31st chapter of the 10th canto, that is the Gopi Gita. So when the Gopi Gita is being described, at that time Prabhupada's description of the Gopi Gita, it starts in Prabhupada, there are 19 verses there. So Prabhupada gives the translations of those verses, and then suddenly at one particular Prabhupada stops and he says, in this way the gopis chanted Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now we may wonder, where the gopis chanted Hare Krishna over there. If somebody will be skeptical, cynical, you will go 10th canto. Where is the reference to Hare Krishna? Look at all the Sanskrit. There is no Hare Krishna. What has Prabhupada done over here? Somebody may ask like that. Actually, whenever a translation is to be done, translation is always a balancing act between precision and relevance. Precision means stating precisely exactly what is said in the original. And relevance means speaking it in a way that people can understand. So there is Sambandha, there is Abhideya, and there is Prayojan. Sambandha means philosophical knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. Abhideya means the practical means by which one can fix the mind on Krishna. And Prayojan means the mature development of love of God, the rich experience of love for Krishna. Now Sambandha, Jnana, never changes. It remains the same. It always remains the same because ultimately we are servants of Krishna. But Abhideya, the method of fixing the mind on Krishna, will change. According to time, place, circumstance, it will change. See, we see our acharyas themselves, they demonstrate this. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they were at a very respected position in the Islamic government. And they renounced that to go to Vrindavan and focus on writing literature. Now we see Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also in a similar position. He was in a very respected position in the British government. Now in one sense, both governments were non-devotional. But we see that Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they renounced their governmental position. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur stayed on with the government position. And still, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is called as the seventh Goswami. So, why is that? Because the way one can practice bhakti and share bhakti with others will vary according to time, place, circumstance. So Abhideya will change. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when in Bengal, Vaishnavism, although there was some persecution, overall there was a broad culture of Vaishnavism that was there. And the devotees were practicing the bhakti at that time, and we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not ask any of the devotees at that time in the Navadvip Bengal area to construct any big temples. Why? Because there was the persecution that was there, and kirtan is something which can be very easily done and easily stopped. But if you have deities and temple, it cannot be easily dismantled or removed. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu focused on Sankirtan. But deity worship is also a very important part. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Rupa and Sanatan, at one level they are renouncing the world, demonstrates Tyaktva Turuna Mashesha Mandalapati, renouncing everything for the sake of Krishna. But at another level, Rupa and Sanatan, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted that they use their political savvy for ensuring the redevelopment of Vrindavan. Now Vrindavan was dangerously close to Delhi, which was the center of the Islamic power. So Rupa and Sanatan, and after that Jiva Goswami, by being present over there, they ensured that Vrindavan was restored in its glory. So there they did the service by renouncing the world. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he lived at a time when the renunciates were not much respected, because the Bhadraloka, the people who were educated from the West, educated in Western education, they did not respect the renunciates much. But they respected a person who had education, who had position, and if such a person was talking about Vaishnavism, they took him seriously. So, Abhideya, how one fixes the mind on Krishna will vary according to time, place, circumstance. So, in the Krishna book, when Prabhupada says that the gopis were chanting Hare Krishna, what does that mean? Prabhupada is giving us the Abhideya for doing in essence what the gopis were doing. The gopis were essentially remembering Krishna in separation from him. So we too can remember him in separation from him by chanting Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada gives us access to the 10th canto through the Krishna book. And right in the first chapter itself, Prabhupada, first chapter of the first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says that the serious student to study not just his commentaries, even Priyasacharya's commentaries. And that list he gives not just Gaudiya Vaishnava commentaries, he quotes even Vallabhacharya. And he quotes other Sampradayas Acharya's commentaries also. So the point is, Prabhupada has given us entry into the 10th canto. And what we have is not, when we are cautious about the 10th canto, that is not phobic. That is ensuring that we enter into 10th canto with a proper understanding. So I'll conclude with one point about what we mean by the proper understanding. I just mentioned earlier about transmoral and immoral. Another way of understanding this is that whenever we hear any story, at that time there is a identification that we do. And for example, if we see some drama, or if we watch some movie, or read some novel, then we connect with some character in the novel, in that particular narrative. And then if we identify with that, then we start getting emotionally involved in what is happening in that story. So normally speaking, when we start studying reading any story, we come with the mood of the enjoyer. That means, say if we study Krishna's pastimes, we identify with Krishna. Identify with Krishna doesn't necessarily mean that we identify with Krishna literally. We identify with Krishna as the enjoyer. And the great devotees, when they hear Krishna's pastimes, they don't identify with Krishna. They identify with the gopis. Identifying with the gopis doesn't mean that males start thinking they are females. Identifying with the gopis means we understand that I am a devotee and the gopis are the paramount devotees. So if we approach Krishna, if to the extent we can go beyond the filter of seeing Krishna simply as a male and gopis as females, and we can see Krishna as the Lord and the gopis as devotees, to that extent we will be able to appreciate and relish how these pastimes are pastimes of pure love. Now when from Krishna's perspective, whether he is embracing Uddhava, is he embracing Arjuna, or whether he is embracing Radharani, it's all the same. Same in the sense that they are all his devotees. But when we have a material vision, we are not able to see it all as the same. We start thinking maybe this is just an ordinary male-female relationship. So as we become purified, what happens is we start seeing ourselves not as the enjoyer but as the enjoyed, not as the Lord but as the devotee. And to the extent when we hear Krishna's pastimes, to the extent we can identify with the gopis, to that extent what will happen is that hearing these pastimes will eradicate lust from the heart. How will it eradicate lust? In fact, the Bhagavatam itself promises this at the end of the 10th canto, or Panchadhyaya. Vikriditam Rajavadhuviridam cha Vishnu Shraddhanvito Anushunayad Tavarnayedya. If one hears this faithfully, then what happens? Bhaktim Param Bhagavati Pratilabhya Kamam. Will get pure devotion. And then Rudro Gamashva Apahinoti. the Hridroga, the heart disease of lust will be eradicated. So how exactly will this happen? That the heart disease of lust will be eradicated by hearing the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, which seem to be like lust itself. Because they are not lust. They are the origin from which the lust of the world has come. The Bhagavad Gita 15.1 talks about this world as a reflection of the spiritual world. Urdhva moolam adha shakam. So there's an upside down tree. Now, so the male-female attraction, which is the basis of all material attachments in this world, that is like the reflection. It's like the reflection. And it is very attractive. A person is desperately hungry and a person sees a reflection of a mango. What will happen? The person will just dive into that river to try to get that mango. And all that will happen is no matter how much one tries, one will not get the mango at all. But then, if the person is told, hey, don't dive into that river. Hey, I'm starving, I need something to eat. How will I not? So just telling people that, don't be attracted to worldly things. That doesn't work. What the Bhagavatam tells us is this is a reflection, but there is a reality also. So the reality is there is a tree and there is a real mango. The real mango is the relationship between the soul and Krishna. And to the extent we understand, okay, this is a reflection and there is no substance over here. That is the substance. And then we feel inspired to move toward the substance. And actually just moving toward the substance itself purifies us. It gives us progressively deeper and richer happiness. And that's how we become detached. Now, the mistake that can happen is, instead of the reflection reminding us of the reality can remind us of the reflection. That means that when we see Radha Krishna's pastimes, sometimes a young boy and a young girl may come to a temple and they look at Radha Krishna. Oh, Radha Krishna are there, we are here. So, they start thinking it's essentially the same. So, if we are not properly philosophically educated and devotionally purified, then the reality reminds us of the reflection. And when the reality reminds us of the reflection, that can have two responses. Either is, we use it to justify immorality. If Krishna does that with the gopis, then why can't I? We use it to justify immorality, or we use it to justify superiority. You worship, as I said, the Western people did. You worship an immoral God. What kind of morality do you have? But both attitudes are wrong because they don't recognize the difference between the reflection and the reality. And by systematically studying the philosophy and by gradually becoming purified by the practice of bhakti, we clearly understand the difference between the reflection and the reality. And then eventually, as we become progressively more and more attracted to the reality, then we become freed from lust. So, what Krishna is revealing in the 10th canto, whether it be in the pastimes of the gopis, or the Parsa Panchadhyaya, or here, it is in the memories of the pastimes of the gopis, all that is meant to redirect us from reflection to reality through progressive philosophical education and devotional purification. So Srila Prabhupada also demonstrated that same mood of sarva dharman parityajya. How do we do that? It is said many places that when a person becomes old, if a person goes to a holy place, one should never leave that holy place. The only time a person should leave the holy place is when one leaves that body in the holy place. So people take a vrata, I will stay in Vrindavan, I will stay in Kashi. And similarly, it says sannyasi should not travel across the oceans. But all these rules are there. Prabhupada respected those rules. But for him there was a higher rule. The higher rule is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prophecy has to be fulfilled. My spiritual master's instruction has to be followed. And sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam. So Prabhupada demonstrated that surrender to Krishna by carrying out the instructions of Krishna as manifested through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his spiritual master. And through that, he is offering all of us entry into the intimate pastimes of Krishna. So we don't have to imagine ourselves to be deprived of Krishna Bhakti, nor do we have to imagine ourselves as to be already spiritually advanced and probing into intimate pastimes. We practice the process of Krishna consciousness that is given to us, and as we keep practicing, we will become purified more and more, and then we will become spiritually attracted to Krishna. Not just sentimentally or materially attracted. Oh, Krishna pastimes seem more interesting to me. No, spiritually attracted. That means the attraction to Krishna will progressively free us from material attractions. And that attraction is what will ultimately take us back to Krishna. So Krishna's pastimes are not just the trailer, they are also the trail. The trailer means a glimpse of what is to come. Trail means path. By remembering Krishna's pastimes, by remembering Krishna and developing attraction to Krishna, they comprise the path by which we will return back to Him. So they are the trailer as well as the trail.